which is exactly what Scripture states in James chapter 2, 15 and 16. I just realized I sound less like Mr. Bean and more like Mark Stein.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, brought to you by Cook's Holsters, American-made custom Kydex holsters with a lifetime warranty and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. CooksHolsters.com. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran. This is episode 67. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you with us. We've got a great show for you again today. Right off the top here, before we get started, I wanted to send out a few thank yous. Thank you first off to our great sponsors, Guns for Gals, Galloway Precision, U.S. Reloading Supply. I want to thank Jim Swindle for renewing his sponsorship with us and sticking with us for another quarter. Really appreciate your support. RAE Gear, great products. Really appreciate your support as well. And of course, Bob Cook at Cook's Holsters for his continued support for the program. I want a quick thank you to everybody who's signed up for the Reformation Gun Club. I want to recommend that to you if you have not taken advantage of it. There's four membership options. The Potluck Pistolero is a month-to-month membership that gives you access to all of the member content for $1.50 per month. If you want to sign up for a full year, it's $15.17 per year. That makes you a Reformation Rifleman. And if you want to sign up for a multi-year membership, for a 2-year membership, that's the Gospel Gunslinger. That's $27.30 for 2 years, and that gets you a 10% discount off the annual rate. You get access to lots of great members-only content. We've got we don't have all of them, but we're gradually building up to it. You have individual segments for all the different segments of the show throughout the history of the show. You'll have individual segments that you can listen to. Currently, they're not downloadable. That's coming, and I'm working on an app to allow you access to it as well. You'll be able to download or listen to full-length interviews, full-length segments of Clinging to God and Guns. A lot of times, those segments run very long, and they have to be edited for time. A perfect example, a couple of episodes back when we had Aaron Craig on the show, that interview was about an hour and 39 minutes, and I had to trim it down to about 35 minutes for the show. So there's a lot of extra content that you will get as a member of the Reformation Gun Club. I want to thank Andy Sundberg, Donald Simmons, Gordon Lewis, Dave Hagenauer, Jackie Russo, James Martin, Brian Potratz, all of you guys, thank you so much for joining, and be sure to check it out. It's at gunclub.armedlutheran.us. You can find out about all of the membership options and sign up today. Before we get into the show today, there's a couple of things that happened that I've been thinking about some of the recent shootings. And we talked about one of them last week, which was this tragic shooting, this 13-year-old who accidentally shot himself. Well, there's been a couple of other events that have me thinking about gun control in the U.S. and the state of gun control in the U.S. currently. You know, since the election of Donald Trump and the defeat of the anti-gun left's preferred candidate, Hillary Clinton, those gun control groups are really becoming very desperate to sort of remain relevant. You know, this past week we learned that billionaire Michael Bloomberg has somehow come out of hiding, and he's going to be spending something like 20 or 25 million bucks to fight for increased gun control. When it was announced that Donald Trump was going to be the first president, I think since Ronald Reagan, to speak at the NRA Annual Meetings later this month, every town for illegal mayors against legal guns. One of Bloomberg's gun control groups, they announced that they would be organizing protests at the meetings. I'm sure that's going to be a smashing success, as it always is, although they will probably draw from various anti-Trump protest crowds that will be there already. They'll probably mix them in their photos to make it look like they drew a bigger crowd so that their numbers don't look as pathetic as they usually do. With Republicans controlling both houses of Congress and the White House, the majority of state legislatures, and the majority of the governor's mansions around the country, gun banners probably feel right now like, the proverbial one-legged man in the butt-kicking contest. With more and more states, are passing laws to expand gun rights. Iowa recently did it. I understand that Alabama and Louisiana and my home state of Texas are all now debating the possibility of constitutional carry. Plus, there's the possibility of a national concealed carry reciprocity bill, the Hearing Protection Act. Gun banners probably feel like double amputees in that aforementioned butt-kicking contest. I mean, it's things are just coming at them left and right. They don't know what to do. Plus, liberal newspapers have been calling them out for their horrendous lies about silencers, for example, when they've written articles about the dangers of suppressors, and they spew a bunch of lies about them, about how dangerous they are. And I think it was the Washington Times gave I think it was Gabby Gifford's group, Americans for Irresponsible Solutions, like 3 Pinocchios for their recent article where they were complaining about the dangers of silencers. So things have not been going well for the anti-gun left lately, and the news just doesn't seem to help either. Under normal circumstances, you'd think that a school shooting and a mass shooting would be driving public debate about gun control, it'd be moving the needle forward towards more gun control, but they're really not. Gun banners just can't seem to get a break. In San Bernardino, California, where just a little over a year ago, Mr. and Mrs. Jihad decided to go and shoot up a company Christmas party, that sparked a national debate about the terrorist watch list and no-fly lists, and you probably remember that whole debate about no-fly, no-buy. Well, last week there was a school shooting in San Bernardino, and you probably haven't heard about it. I mean, gun ban groups tried to make a story out of it, but then the details came out, and all the narratives came crashing down. Because instead of this being a disgruntled old white guy or some racist Republican gun nut, the shooter turned out to be black. Go! And instead of using an assault weapon or even a semi-automatic pistol, he used a 6-shot revolver. Go! And crushing the usual tropes about magazine capacity and how forcing a shooter to reload will save lives, this guy not only did he have a revolver, but he fired 9 shots before killing himself with the 10th. Go! So he took time to reload, slowly. And most damning, maybe, this wasn't just some random killing spree. It was a calculated act of domestic violence. The shooter killed his estranged wife, who was a teacher at that school, before he killed himself. So this was not another Newtown. Even though groups like Gabby and the Astronaut tried to portray it that way, this was not really another school shooting. Go! So the anti-gunners then shifted gears.
Okay, that didn't work, but I know something that will.
And instead of talking about school shootings, they then talked about domestic violence. And they started calling for gun control laws, sensible gun control laws, to prevent domestic abusers from getting their hands on guns, or laws that would take guns out of the hands of domestic abusers and stalkers. Well, there's a problem. California, they've already got that kind of law. Domestic violence restraining orders can be used to remove guns from the hands of domestic abusers or stalkers. That's already on the books. Go! So why didn't it stop this shooting? The answer is simple, really. Domestic violence restraining orders rarely actually protect anyone. Typically, a restraining order only works if the abuser is not violent. Say in the case of a stalker who's just kind of creepy and persistent and he won't get the message, he's annoying. Usually they back off when a restraining order is put in place. But if there is an intimate relationship and that abuser is violent, 1/3 of the victims are killed within a month of getting a restraining order. A restraining order is just a piece of paper. A restraining order is an escalation. Like the laws that say you can't take a gun into a school, restraining orders provide no protection against deranged or determined aggressors. In this case, it didn't matter. And this is the real tragedy of it, because the victim didn't take out a restraining order.
Go!
So it doesn't matter what gun control you pass in California related to domestic violence and restraining orders. The victim left her husband within a month of marrying him. She moved in with adult children, but she never took out a restraining order, despite the fact that he had made threats against her. She said she thought he was just trying to get her, that he was acting out, just trying to get her to move back in. She didn't even tell her friends at work that her marital status had changed. She didn't even tell them that she was no longer living with her husband. When her estranged husband showed up at the school, claiming that he was bringing something to his wife, they let him walk right in with a gun. You know, the gun that's illegal to carry into a school. Somehow that gun-free zone sign didn't stop him.
Go!
Shocking, I know. Everything about this incident destroys the anti-gun left and their demands for tougher gun laws. So then on Tuesday, there was another shooting in California. This one was in Fresno, and it left 3 people dead, and I'm sure the anti-gunners were licking their chops at this one. All right, here's a chance. Here's one we can sink our teeth into. But again, they couldn't catch a break. And as the details came out, all the narratives came crashing down again. The shooter's black. He's a member of the Nation of Islam. And he's a hateful racist who killed 3 white people at random, specifically because they were white, because he thought there was a race war and he wanted to kill as many whites as possible. Having a black guy going around randomly killing people because they're white and then telling law-abiding white folks that they need to give up their guns is probably not a great selling point. And it doesn't help that the guy's 39 and he's been a gangbanger for at least 30 years. Yeah, you heard that right. He joined the gang at age 9. So he's got a 26-year criminal background, including a stint in federal prison. So he was prohibited from having the gun that he used to kill those people.
Oh! It just gets worse and worse!
And yet, somehow, in jolly old California, he still had one. So if you're a liberal Democrat and you want to sell gun control, this guy's story is just a complete fail. It almost makes you feel sorry for Gabby and Shannon. Almost. All right, we're going to get the show started with Sergeant Bill after these messages right here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
With those words, our founding fathers changed the world. They launched an experiment in freedom, where common lawful citizens are free to speak and gather and worship as they choose. But first among those freedoms is the one freedom that makes the rest possible. For 130 years, we've worked to preserve freedom first. I'm Wayne LaPierre of the National Rifle Association.
As many of you know, Sergeant Bill and I are competitive shooters. We're also reloaders. Bill helped me to get started last year, but I've still got a lot to learn. One thing I do know, though, you need a good source for supplies and components. So let me tell you about U.S. Reloading Supply. Yeah, there are bigger suppliers out there, but what sets U.S. Reloading Supply apart from the rest is their dedication to customer satisfaction. Check them out at usreloadingsupply.com. They carry the top name brands like Starline, Rainier, Barry's, Remington, Spear, and Hornady. If you've got a special order like primers and powder that you don't see on their website, give them a call for a quote. I did and got a great price. Excellent customer service, fast delivery, prices that include shipping, and a promise to match or beat any retailer's price, including shipping. Call them today, 941-451-7357, or visit them today at usreloadingsupply.com and use the promo code Lutheran2017 to save 10% off your order. usreloadingsupply.com.
Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Silvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill and this is your Ballistic Minute. Today I'm going to talk about the Mantis X. I know this sounds like a bad guy superhero or something, but the Mantis X is actually a revolutionary gun attachment that analyzes the data from your shooting, movement of your gun, to improve your shooting. So basically, it's a little module that attaches to the rail of your firearm, and it's got some gyroscopes and some other technical mumbo jumbo in there that I know nothing about. That what it basically does is it will analyze the movement of your gun while you're shooting, whether it be live fire or dry fire. Now it can go on a pistol or a rifle, I guess even a shotgun. There's a little settings page. You have to get an app for your phone. It syncs up with Bluetooth on your phone, and you can set it for left-handed shooter, right-handed shooter, if it's a rifle or a shotgun, if it's mounted below or above the gun or left or right. So basically it's, like I said, just showing the movement of the muzzle or the Mantis X module itself. It's really good for live fire. It's also good for dry fire as well, because even while you're manipulating the trigger, you're still going to show the movement. Now it's going to show more movement when you're actually shooting, because you're not going to be concentrating as much on the trigger. You're going to be thinking a little bit about that gun going off as well. So I got to use the Mantis X module several times in several different range sessions and dry fire sessions as well. And I got to use it with some other people as well at a little range meeting I had with some friends. And what I did notice about it was it works really well with new to novice shooters. So most new and novice shooters that don't have a lot of experience shooting or really perfecting their trigger mechanics or having training doing that, they don't really know what they're doing and what it's doing to the gun while they're shooting. And the app will show them in a graphical analysis and kind of like a picture analysis. It's got like a X and Y, and it'll show the movement, the actual physical movement of where it's moving before the shot, just before the shot, right at the shot, and immediately right after the shot goes off. That picture and graphical analysis will really kind of open the eyes of new and novice shooters as to what they're doing. And then you just got to show them how to fix it. There's a Learn tab on the app that has your typical bullseye. Here's what you're doing wrong: healing, squeezing, milking, all that, that old school generalized wrong wisdom of misses. They're not totally wrong. Some of them, are pretty right, but they're all kind of generalizations. A lot of times you have to kind of see what you're doing to figure out what you're doing. Usually that takes someone else seeing what you're doing to figure out, you're using too much finger, or you're squeezing the gun too hard, or you're flinching just beforehand, or whatever it may be. Now, experienced shooters can use this to verify their trigger pull issues and or mistakes. I had several of my buddies that tried it out, and they were shooting, and they're right-handed shooters, and they were missing a little bit low to the left every now and then, once out of every 4 or 5 shots. And they would then also see it as well on the app for the Mantis X, as well as the target, and they were going, oh yeah, that's my normal miss. And I get a little bit ahead of myself and I start squeezing the gun too hard as I'm pulling the trigger, and typically called milking the trigger, and that's why they get their low left. So they can use it to verify their mistakes, which is a good thing. So all in all, it's pretty much a great teaching tool for new and novice and moderately experienced shooters. It does have some cons, though. You can't use it out of a holster because the module is not quite the same size as a flashlight. If you have a flashlight attachment for your pistol, it just doesn't fit in any of the holsters. You pretty much have to focus on one target, because if you transition from one target to the next, it's going to see that as some big wild movement. Another con is like I said earlier, the learn part of the app is, the generalized wisdom of, here's your misses, this is why you're doing this. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not quite right. And last but not least, a shooter must be static. You can't really move around and move from one position to another and shoot targets here and then move over to there and shoot targets from over there. Because, like I said, with transitioning from targets, the module itself is going to see your movement as movement of the gun, which it is, but it's going to think you're moving all over the place just before you shoot. So it's a good teaching and learning tool, but it has some shortcomings. As long as you understand those shortcomings, it works pretty good. So is the Mantis X a revolutionary gun attachment? Yes. It's using technology to help you better understand what you're doing when you're pulling the trigger and when the gun fires, just before and just after. It's pretty amazing. It also will track your information, so you can use that data to see how you've progressed or gotten worse, whatever the case may be. So from that standpoint and learning standpoint, it's pretty revolutionary. It's amazing to see where we've come from and where we're going to with equipment and computers and technology, even in the firearms industry. It has a pretty hefty price tag. I believe it's $149.95 or something similar to that, around $150. You'll have to judge for yourself if it's worth it for you. But I'll say this, the Mantis X is a good revolutionary tool to help you improve your shooting. I'm Sergeant Bill, and this has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Silvia is a 15-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department and masterclass competitive shooter. You can watch Sergeant Bill's shooting videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill.
If you carry a multi-tool or pistol magazine every day, check out RAE Gear high-quality tactical sheaths. Designed with the needs of law enforcement, military, first responders, and concealed carriers in mind, RAE Gear sheaths are made from powder-coated stainless steel, making them strong, corrosion-resistant, and lightweight. They feature a spring steel belt clip for easy deployment and removal. Your tool or magazine can be easily accessed with just one finger, and yet the integrated retention keeps your tool or magazine secure even when turned upside down. RAE Gear's tool sheaths are designed to work with a variety of Leatherman brand multi-tools, and their new line of quick deployment mag sheaths offer the same tough construction and corrosion resistance for carrying most double-stacked 9mm, 40 caliber, and 357 SIG magazines. Check out the full line of products at www.raegearusa.com and be sure to use the promo code ALR at checkout and save 10% off your order. Recognize, assess, execute. raegearusa.com.
So how many of you have been in this situation? You hear about a gun or you read about it, you decide you want to check it out. You go and you try it out at a gun show or at your local gun store and you decide to buy. Maybe it feels really good in your hand, the price is right, the size is perfect, but then you take it to the range and the trigger is awful. Now you've got that gun that you've invested your time and your money in, but you don't like to shoot it. So you either trade it, maybe you try to sell it and hope that you can make some of your money back, or you grin and bear it. Well, what if I told you that you can get the performance that you wanted out of the gun that you already have? Galloway Precision makes trigger conversion kits for a wide range of guns to produce smoother, lighter, better functioning triggers. Galloway Precision is your carry pistol specialist. Check out their complete collection of performance parts at gallowayprecision.com and use the promo code Lutheran2017 to save 10% off your order. Make the gun that you choose to carry better with precision parts from gallowayprecision.com.
It's time for this week's self-defense tip from Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense.
Hey folks, this is Aaron Israel with Fundamental Defense, here with your personal defense tip of the week. This week I want to talk to you about an article I read in Psychology Today back from March of 2011 that showed back up in my Facebook newsfeed today. And it's a guy whose last name I can't probably pronounce, but I'm going to try. Kanazawa, a Japanese guy, I believe, who writes about the way that people perceive other people. And the article talks about the fact that human beings are good at picking out criminals from non-criminals just based on their physical appearance and really just based on looking at their face a lot of the time. He talks about the fact that most stereotypes have an element of empirical truth to them, otherwise they wouldn't be stereotypes, and this is one of those things where it shows up across the board. He talks about an experiment that he did where he handed people pictures of mugshots of criminals mixed in with mugshots of regular people and asked them to pick out the actual criminals. And almost without fail, they were able to do that just by looking at a mugshot, rating them on a point scale of 1 to 7 of extremely unlikely to extremely likely of whether they're a criminal or not. And the results of the two experiments consistently showed that the individuals could tell who the criminal was, not by anything else but looking at their face. And so it's a high probability that criminal actors are going to physically look different than non-criminal actors. And the reason I bring this article up is that when you interact with people out in the public space or in your personal life, you can trust your intuition to a high degree. The intelligence of the unconscious has a lot of things that we don't fully understand about it that we can't really study in a very efficient way, but this is one of the examples where we've got some empirical evidence that shows that people's intuitions a lot of the time are very reliable. So if you see someone who looks like they are a threat to you, whether it's the way they're carrying themselves, their physical appearance, the way that their face even looks based on this study, you should probably trust that intuition and take steps to keep them from getting in your personal space and potentially becoming a physical threat to you. So when you see something that's out of place in the public space, whether it's the way the person's walking, the way that they're talking to somebody, the way they're approaching you, and you just feel off, that off feeling is an instinct that we have that we don't fully understand that prepares us to deal with the potential for a threat. So before you get into a fight with that person, trust your instincts and create space between you and that person, or do whatever you need to do to prepare yourself for the possibility that your intuition is correct and you need to be willing to and ready to fight with this person. So trust your intuition is your personal defense tip for this week. Thanks for tuning in.
Aaron Israel is a Personal Defense Network contributor and owner of Fundamental Defense. You can find out more and sign up for any of Aaron's classes at fundamentaldefense.com.
The percentage of women who own guns is growing. American women are more knowledgeable and better equipped to defend themselves than ever before. So, why is it that every time I go to a gun shop, I feel like they're talking down to me? Like, hey little lady, let me show you what you need. It's like all they want to do is sell me a pink gun. If you're tired of feeling that too, visit Guns for Gals, a specialty firearms boutique designed to empower women with information about firearm safety and to equip them with the means to protect themselves. The owners go out of their way to find products specifically for women, and they actually listen and ask questions to help you find the right products to meet your needs. If they wouldn't own it themselves, they won't sell it. Guns for Gals is located at 2035 Central Circle, Suite 108 in McKinney, Texas. Open Monday 1 to 6 and Tuesday through Thursday 11 to 7. And on weekends, you can find them at a gun show near you. Or shop online at www.gunsforgals.com. Guns for Gals, more than just a gun shop. It's how gun shopping should be.
Up next, it's Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstine.
Hey everybody, I just have a quick little something this week for you. This week is the NRA Annual Meetings, and Lloyd mentioned that he's not going to be there, but I am. And I had a message on Facebook this week from Armed Lutheran Radio listener. So Rob, thank you for the message. And I wanted to let everybody else know also that I will be at the NRA Annual Meetings. And if you want to find me, I'm going to be out and about and at several different events. But one place where I can tell you that I'm scheduled to be is at the Shoot Like a Girl trailer. And that's outside, and if you just look for their trailer, I'll be working there on Friday, April 28th. I'll be there from 4:30 until the end of the show. And then on Saturday, I will be there from 3 o'clock till about 6 o'clock. So if you want to stop by and say hi, it'd be great to meet some of you. And if not, then maybe we can find each other on another event. On that note, I am headed to get ready and pack, and hopefully I'll see some of you there. Have a great week. Bye, guys.
You can read more from Mia and watch her YouTube videos at miaanstine.com.
So you have your concealed carry permit or license to carry. Now what? Now you need a good holster. Not one of those cheap neoprene prophylactic holsters you can buy in the big box stores. You need a holster custom built for the firearm you intend to carry every day. Check out cooksholsters.com. Made in the USA, Cooks holsters are available in a wide range of colors and designs for inside the waistband or outside waistband carry. They carry a lifetime warranty against defects and a 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Visit www.cooksholsters.com and use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST and take 15% off everything in the store. You put in the time and effort to legally carry a firearm for personal protection. Protect your firearm with a custom holster from cooksholsters.com.
Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. And I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Up next, we're clinging to God and guns with Pastor John Bennett.
A while back, Lloyd and I had this idea of recording responses to audience feedback for those times when our schedules don't line up. And last week, that's exactly what happened, so this is the first of these audience feedback responses. Now, the feedback we're going to look at comes to us from James, a self-proclaimed, quote, libertarian deadhead. Now, if you've ever known any deadheads, one thing that is characteristic of them is they like to smoke a lot of weed. Maybe that's what's going on here. I don't know. He also describes himself as a, in all caps, liberal. But it would seem that James is confused about the definitions of these terms. Now, his feedback isn't very charitable. It's all over the place, as you'll see in a little bit. He is condescending and arrogant, which is, well, it's kind of what we've come to expect from liberals. Out of everything that he says, he does make about one half of a valid point, but he gets so much so terribly wrong. He starts out like this. I found your site while researching a Sarsima's hawk. I bought the pistol and was intrigued. Reading further, I found your excellent piece about judging books by their covers. Now, if James would have stopped there, that would have been great. But he didn't. He goes on. Then the political side came out, and it is just as incoherent as any Fox News coverage about anything. Now, it would appear based on James's comments that he hasn't actually listened to Armed Lutheran Radio. If he is listening, he's probably not going to care too much for my critique of his feedback. It seems as if he's only looked at the blog posts on the Armed Lutheran website. Well, whether or not you have read the blog posts, and if you're listening to this, obviously, perhaps you've been listening for a while, but one thing ought to be clear. Whether or not you agree with the political opinions that are voiced on this program or through the Armed Lutheran website, it should be clear that there is nothing really incoherent about the political arguments that are being made. Now, a person might disagree with them, and you're free to do so. Perhaps there's times where an argument could be made more succinctly, but to say that the political views that are expressed here are just plain incoherent is silly. Reading between the lines, I would guess that James just doesn't like the political opinions he's hearing or reading about. He resorts to ad hominem instead of addressing the opinions he doesn't agree with. If you want to debate an issue, make an argument. But simply throwing out platitudes and talking points, well, that's a losing strategy. James continues. Propaganda is dangerous to the target. Since the early 80s, the NRA has become a propaganda machine, not an organization to help folks learn to handle rifles. If you don't think that is true, just watch an episode of Forgotten Weapons and listen to Wayne spew his venom at Islamic terrorists while intimating complete collapse of society if everyone isn't packing heat. The issue is it is not true. The only change to gun laws since the Obama administration was some clarifications on who can be included in Class 3 NFA trusts. I don't even know what to make of this. He just got through saying that Lloyd's comments on political issues are incoherent, but then he follows that by throwing down incoherent statements. It's like he took a bunch of liberal buzzwords, put them in a hat, picked out a few, and threw them together into a few incoherent statements. But let's look at what he actually says. To say that the NRA does not operate as an organization to, quote, help folks learn to handle rifles, James' words, not mine, well, to say that's just flat out false. A big part of what the NRA does is education. The other side of that is advocacy for gun rights. There's just no way around it. That's what the NRA does. Now, as to the accusations regarding what Wayne LaPierre has said, I don't know if spewing venom at Islamic terrorism is a bad thing. Last time I checked, the goal of Islamic terrorism is the destruction of the Western world and the establishment of a worldwide caliphate. But I guess James just doesn't have any concerns about that. But let's look at what happened on Palm Sunday in Egypt. Coptic Christians were targeted and slaughtered for their faith in the crucified and risen Son of God. Like it or not, the United States is viewed by the Muslim world as a Christian nation, and the hatred by radical Islam towards the United States and towards Christians is just as strong as their hatred for Israel, perhaps even more so. Now, one point that he almost gets correct, and this is where that half a point comes from that I'll award him for today. While it's true that there were very few changes to gun laws under the Obama administration, this doesn't mean that Obama didn't try. Instead of asking the questions, what changes were made, ask the question, what changes would Obama have made if he could? Back when he was teaching at Chicago University in the early 90s, he stated, quote, "I don't believe people should be able to own guns." While he ran for the state senate in Illinois, one of his campaign promises was to support a ban on, quote, "the manufacture, sale, and possession of handguns." While serving as the U.S. Senator for Illinois, he supported Washington, D.C.'s comprehensive gun ban. While he was president, he worked with the ATF to ban the importation of inexpensive 5.45x39 ammunition, also known as the AK-74 round. He pushed environmental regulations that made it increasingly difficult to manufacture lead-based ammunition in the United States at a reasonable cost. And despite panic buying following public shootings, that is the single greatest reason that ammunition prices have gone up drastically since 2008. Under his administration, the importation of once inexpensive military surplus firearms became greatly restricted, drying up the supply and jacking up prices. While I could go on, I think that's enough to make the point that under the Obama administration, our Second Amendment rights were constantly under attack. Now James tries to make a point. He says, "My point is that if we were to have a rational dialogue, there could be no propaganda from either side. The conversation would probably be more civil." But so far, James hasn't made any sense. He's not speaking rationally. And those are the requirements for having a rational dialogue. But I digress. Now he gets really irrational. Well, he also gets downright offensive. He says the term conservative Christian is an oxymoron. Christ was the greatest, in all capitals, liberal who ever lived. To argue otherwise is not rational. This truly makes my blood boil. As Lloyd and I have discussed often in these segments, to superimpose your political ideology upon the Scriptures, to superimpose your political ideology on Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is to be unfaithful to God's Word. It's to slap the Son of God in the face. And it is the exact opposite approach that a Christian ought to have regarding politics. Our political convictions ought to be informed by God's Word, not the other way around. What James has done here is blurred the difference between faith and politics. The term conservative Christian has absolutely nothing to do with politics. To be a conservative Christian has everything to do with how the believer regards the Scriptures. It means understanding the Bible to be the inspired and inerrant Word of God. It means understanding that God's Word is the only source and norm for faith and life. But to say that Christ was the, quote, greatest liberal who ever lived is the greatest piece of bovine scatology that Lloyd and I have ever come across since we started the Clinging to God and Guns segment. To steal from James, to say otherwise, is not rational. But words have meaning. So let's consider what it means to be a liberal in America in 2017. It means supporting the dismemberment of preborn babies at any point during the pregnancy. It means forcing little girls to share a bathroom with fully grown men who think they're women. It means depriving hard-working Americans of a portion of the product of their labor and giving to those who have not earned it as the repercussions for being successful. It means forcing Christian bakers and florists to provide services for same-sex weddings against their consciences, and if they don't, impose hefty fines and deprive them of their livelihoods. It means hating Israel and supporting Islamic fundamentalism. It means silencing dissenting opinions. It means hating and vilifying those you disagree with. Does that sound like Jesus to you? You have heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. That doesn't sound like a liberal talking point to me. Jesus said to the woman caught in adultery, "Go and sin no more." That doesn't sound much like the immoral filth that's pushed by the left. Jesus says, as recorded by St. Luke, "The laborer is worthy of his wages." That doesn't sound like redistribution of wealth to me. To say that Jesus was, quote, the greatest liberal is just plain offensive. It's downright blasphemous. Shame on you, James. Shame on you. I'm going to skip ahead because there's just a bunch of incoherent babbling. We find this offensive gibberish. What I found odious is you call yourself a Lutheran, which is a Christian sect last I checked, and the real follower of Christ would have a difficult time defending your stated positions. What a disgusting thing to say. Odious, from Merriam-Webster, meaning arousing or deserving hatred or repugnance. According to James, it's odious, that is to say, it's deserving of hatred or repugnance for a person to be both a Christian and hold to both a biblically conservative and a politically conservative worldview. Heaven forbid that a Christian should actually believe that the Bible is God's Word and allow that conviction to inform their political views. Heaven forbid that a Christian should believe in the sanctity of life, that they should believe in love for their neighbor and believe in living a sexually moral life, and allow those beliefs to translate into their everyday life. James closes with this. I am also a liberal, in all capitals, not the kind you may envision with my hand out, but the kind who believes that what I do on my property is my business. What you do on your place is yours, so long as all participants are of age and your property is not negatively impacted. Ain't nobody's business but my own. So if James's mindset is you mind your own business and I'll mind mine, why is he even bothering to provide this feedback? It sounds pretty hypocritical to me because, well, James isn't minding his own business here. It sounds like James is confused. Liberalism in this century doesn't mean what it seems he thinks it means. What he describes is so far removed from what it means to be a liberal. Liberalism in its current form is just one step removed from Marxism. At its core, it's oppressive to those at odds with its philosophy. It punishes non-compliance as harshly as it can. Liberalism is about destroying individualism and replacing it with collectivism and groupthink. It's all about removing power from the people and transferring that power to an expansive and overarching government. Instead, what James is describing when he says, quote, What I do on my own property is my business. What you do on your place is yours. So long as all participants are of age and your property is not negatively impacted, ain't nobody's business but my own. That, in many ways, is what has been in the past called classical liberalism, going back to the early 19th century. It concerns itself with the rights and freedoms of the individual. It was synonymous with free market capitalism, which, by the way, liberals really hate. He claims to be a liberal without seeming to understand what the term even means.
You keep using the word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Well, in closing, let's be clear about one thing. Jesus is not a political poster boy for anything. He's the once crucified and victoriously risen and ever-living Son of God. He said emphatically when facing execution by crucifixion to the man who had the authority to free him, "My kingdom is not of this world." To claim that Jesus was political, or worse yet, to claim that Jesus is a liberal, is to deny the gospel, to deny the purpose for which Jesus took upon himself human flesh, bearing the burden of our sin, dying the death we deserved. To claim that Jesus was a political figure, or worse yet, a liberal, is to turn him into a sleazy politician in a cheap suit. And I don't think Jesus would like that very much. Well, I think that about wraps it all up for today. I hope you found this segment as enlightening and entertaining as it usually is when Lloyd and I hash out horrible and half-witted arguments. Until next time, keep your eyes on the risen Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org.
And that's going to wrap it up for another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. Thank you all for listening, downloading, and subscribing. I want to thank all of our Reformation Gun Club members and thank all of the sponsors who've made today's show possible. I want to thank my great cast of contributors as well: Aaron Israel, Mia Anstine, Sergeant Bill Silvia, and Pastor John Bennett. And thank you, dear listener, for listening, downloading, and subscribing every week. I really appreciate you being with us. I hope you'll join us again next week for another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and TuneIn. This podcast is made possible by Cook's Holsters and contributions from listeners like you.